if stuff works. Just want to see as well what's going on. Right. Content live. Let's see if this is working. Okay, perfect. Should be working. The sound and everything. So first things first, the DAO. On the DAO side, we had a call with the council regarding updates. Good morning, Mr. IDK. We had some call with the council regarding the Ghost DAO future. Shall we use the backing being a stable coin versus using the backing coin as a native coin? And the math still needs to be done before this decision could be brought into the attention of all whales. But there have been some interesting thoughts, pros and cons regarding both. Whether the backing should be stablecoin or the backing should be a native coin for each particular chain. I don't want to go into details because that will probably be a separate independent call, potential Whales Wednesdays. But kind of another idea how I was thinking about presenting this concept was it's not that the backing, like let's assume we say, okay, no to stable coins, let's go with native coins, or no to native coins, let's go with stable coins. It's not that the treasury is limited just to stable coins or just to native coins. It's more that the denomination, it's more like we are selecting the currency of DAO on a particular chain, right? So like what everything is going to be denominated in. So do you want everything to be denominated in stable coins? Or do you want everything to be denominated in a native coin of a particular blockchain? And of course, we need to figure out the math first to make sure that it's not going to be messing things up. It shouldn't, but who knows, right? Once the math is done, we're working on that, then we need to also plug that math into the code base, see how that is going to play out. Then we're going to be launching that on Ethereum Classic, whatever the version we decide on. And then if it's going to be stablecoin, then it seems like it's pretty tested so far. But if it's going to be a native coin, then of course we'll require additional testing from the users, from you guys, for you guys to break it and see what we can do. All right, so that's the Ghost DAO. On telemetry, so amazing 73 nodes. So we have this cluster, an interesting cluster coming out of this region here, which is amazing. And we're going to be discussing to potentially resume the path towards decentralization. Remember those meme charts we've been publishing every time like we get new nodes and how we compare as far as decentralization to other blockchains. So that would be very, very interesting to see what that comparison looks like. So we have 73 nodes today, again, thanks to everybody, thanks to you guys. But those are nodes. Now the question is, what about the validators? I'm not sure if you'll have it here popped up, but if you don't, I can open this on a different browser and just tell you how much I see, how many validators I see. So far, I see 56 validators, which is insane. So it's not visible here because I need to log into my Ghost Light node in this browser. But 56 validators out of 73 node operators, that's pretty insane. That is what, 80% or something, like 70 to 80% of all the nodes are validators. That's absolutely perfect. That's very good. So the more the better. Okay, so that's this. Just wanted to say thanks to whoever is running nodes and whoever is going to be pulling more nodes. Thank you very much. That's what this project is in need of. Okay. Let's go Vita. There has been some slowdown on the articles, but I noticed. So we've been publishing twice a week. We have a couple of articles still um, in the pipeline that are already scheduled to be published, but there has been some slowdown because we're working on some other things. It's just so busy. So there may be some delay. Maybe we'll switch to once a week for some time. And whenever there's more time, then of course we'll kind of accelerate again. But I think we are pretty much behind on the videos compared to articles. Articles are what, like part chapter 11, chapter 12, chapter 13, whatever it is, right? And we just on chapter 8. And that's again how it's supposed to be. Let's go slow but in depth and fundamental as opposed to just like rush through. So I think we covered this this article last time, talking about how tulips was really Vita money and Fibonacci was Vita. The book of Genesis, which is not part of this article, even kind of in the book of Genesis on day 5, God said, hey, multiply. Like he said to all the creatures, multiply, multiply, multiply. Like, so yeah, I didn't create it, guys. And, just do not shoot the messenger. It is what it is. So we also spoke about elasticity illusion, right? We spoke about how Vita money is perceived to be very elastic because anybody can, just produce lots of crop. There's so many seeds available, and same thing with livestock. But in reality, when we go for the organic options are super, super limited, like extremely limited. Like this is organic meat versus non-organic meat, which they call conventional, which most of us eat, most of us consume, and not even most of us, just in developed nations. Because in developing nations, like Africans, Southeast Asia, etc., it's not the case. Even Japan, right? Even Japan is not so huge on meat, but more more. I think it's more seafood there for them, right? So it's like even Japan does not have that much. Maybe it's cultural, maybe it's supply chain, and thus expensive. In any case, so organic stuff is a lot more difficult to literally produce. It's way more inelastic. The price is way more is way higher and reacts with less elasticity to increase in supply because good luck, producing organic stuff in today's world. Right? It's difficult. So therefore, Vita money is really really inelastic and it's self-multiplying, right? And we also covered self-multiplication, self-replication. So we need to make sure that it's the same property, the same quality of the offspring that is being produced from the parents, right? So only that can be considered to be self-replication. And the reason why that's the case, we covered a week before or 2 weeks before. Remember that was organic APY and synthetic APY. So synthetic APY is inflation in the token, for example, right? Or synthetic APY is inflation in the dollar, right? Inflation in any asset class. While organic APY, in case of blockchains, not mostly, but all the time, is just transaction fees, nothing else. That's it. And Ghost brings this unique perspective where we realize that transaction fees may not be necessarily enough. It's just not enough. So let's bring in additional on-chain revenue in a form of bridging fees. That way, the organic APY in our case will not just be transaction fees, which are extremely difficult to cover up any inflation forces, but let's also add the bridging fees. So bridging fees plus bridging fees plus transaction fees will be comprising the organic APY arm, and then the synthetic APY inflation does not exist, period, with the Ghost coin. So there's zero inflation by default. That's how this architecture works. Which is very interesting, as we again discovered 2 weeks ago, where inflation exists in almost every token, potentially outside of Tron, right, which supposedly has deflation currently, not by design, but currently, and same thing with Ethereum. Currently, not a lot of inflation, although inflation is there. Everybody else has inflation, right? All the other tokens have inflation, and the problem with that inflation is you are mixing new issuance of tokens. So the new issuance of tokens is comprising of a tiny portion of transaction fees and then a much, much bigger portion of inflation. And now, can we say that is self-replication? No, absolutely not, because inflation is coming out of thin air. Transaction fees, conversely, is earned. So now you're comprising some synthetic stuff with organic stuff, and you're getting Frankenstein. And the best example of that is actually Ethereum. So the best example of what not to do, right? Again, who are we, right? Ethereum is number 2, $500 billion market capitalization, amazing project, and here we have Ghost with 73 nodes. Like, who are we to say that Ethereum is not worthy? But here's how it was. First of all, very few people know that the ICO supply of Ethereum is 50% of current supply. So current supply is about 120 million, and ICO supply was 72 million. A significant portion of which was allocated to the team and the foundation of Ethereum, including Vitalik Buterin, etc. So with that in mind, 72 million of that ICO has been printed on a pre-sale and people purchased it. So you have some people who just purchased it. Okay, fine. So now it's like how that Ethereum got created. Somebody paid, dollars in the form of Bitcoin or whatever other cryptocurrencies that have been accepted for the Ethereum ICO, and in return they got Ethereum token. So, right. So that's kind of the first way how those tokens have been created. The second way how these tokens have been created was through proof of work. So now I can buy a machine and just, run the machine, and by doing the work via the machine, I can earn Ethereum tokens, or Ethereum coins. Ethereum coins then have been also inflated through that source, but that's a different way of how they are created. So again, during the ICO era, you had to buy it. During the proof of work era, you had to earn it. And now, during the proof of stake era, you are staking Ethereum to get additional Ethereum, which is also kind of minted as inflation. So that's yet a third way to create Ethereum coins. So therefore, you have this like Frankenstein of 3 different ways of creating supply for Ethereum, and that's not self-replication, right? Is it fine or not? I'm not here to judge. We all have to make our own decisions. All I'm saying is this is not purely self-replication. That's all, right? So therefore, like this, because now you have some people who purchase ICO, some people who just mined it, some people who just staking it now. They're all different qualities of the token, creating this this weird combination, or maybe not weird, but from perspective of self-replication, weird combination of kind of the source of origination of these coins of that inflationary new supply. All right. And so therefore, for Vita, the self-replication must be pretty stellar. So it has to be kind of the same exact way, right? So that's kind of the purer it is, the better. Okay. So now that begs a question. Okay, cool. So we have this Vita money that is extremely amazing. It's natural. It's a living money. Living money because it's either crops or it's livestock, so it's growing by itself. It's growing with economy, growing with population growth, right? Because it perfectly responds to increasing demand from the population. It's living, so it's either expanding or contracting. So if there's war, then it could contract, no problem, right? God forbid, or there's some epidemic. But conversely, if population is just exponentially increasing, then the Vita money can adjust for it as well. So if it's been overproduced, although again we've seen that overproduction with organic meat is extremely difficult, right? So if it's overproduced, then it's overproduced, right? So then kind of it perfectly stabilizes itself, right? So we don't need a central bank for Vita money to say, oh, let's mint more cows today. Oh, let's burn more goats today. Like no, like it just happens by itself. Farmers will, in a decentralized way, decide what to do, right? Same thing with the crops. There's no central bank saying, hey, let's although it happens, right? Like today, all these stupid regulations making it impossible to become a farmer in developed nations, absolutely impossible. But so they're trying to do that, but still, it's way more decentralized as far as I'm as a farmer, I can produce my lot of wheat, and Mr. IDK, you can do yours, and anybody else who's listening, you guys can do the same. So it's way more decentralized as far as issuance and therefore contraction of supply of wheat or barley or potatoes, right, or tobacco, whatever we grow. So it's good, right? So it's kind of it's scarce yet it's expanding, right? And that's the beautiful thing about Vita. So essentially, yes, you know the best example to put it is you have gold. You came in a year from today, you have 2 pieces of gold. Amazing. So how come Vita money did not stay with us? So if it's such great money, what happened to it? Right. So the argument is like, okay, cool, amazing. This is great money. We hear you. Vita money is great. Prove to us then why Vita money did not win the competition. Right? So if it's that great, it was supposed to win the competition. And let's go to the second article where we explain why that did not happen. Or sorry, why that happened. Like, so why Vita actually lost to gold and fiat. So this article is pretty difficult. This is perhaps one of the most difficult articles on the economics specifically. Then we have other more difficult articles on Web3. They're even more challenging. So let's just try to train ourselves to understand more difficult stuff here. So this is the best one diagram explaining the difference between fiat reserve and Vita. Right? And then the question is like, oh, so how is kind of going a couple of steps forward? How is Ghost? Why do we need Ghost? Because Ghost is the first Web3 Vita money. We'll see why, right? So because it's inelastic, it expands over time as far as supply without like being inelastic. So it's not expanding over time through inflation. That's easy. It's expanding over time backed by revenue. So the expansion is completely backed. There's zero inflation, zero unbacked inflation. Right? Let's put it like that, right? There's inflation, but it's all backed. Thus, it's not inflation, it's just expanding. So it expands over time. Thus, the purchasing power expands over time. That's important. It's inelastic. And, that's the big, kind of the only example so far is Ghost. And when we compare this to other protocols, you could say, let's first of all compare this to Bitcoin, for example. How is that different from Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin does not multiply over time. To which you could say, well, Bitcoin already exists. Why do we need Vita? Thing with Bitcoin is heavily influenced by the price action. We will see that in this article as well, right? So it's heavily impacted by price action. So the question like this, we have Bitcoin maxes here, right? We have lots of Bitcoin maxes, of course, not Bitcoin maxes because they don't understand how Bitcoin works. Many Bitcoin maxes just got lucky to buy it, and maybe they forgot the keys and didn't sell it. But most of them don't understand how this works. And the Bitcoin Maxi kind of is a very, very, loosely used term. But the best question for Bitcoin Maxis here is, would you be comfortable to put all your money at the current price of whatever it is, $100,000? Would you be comfortable? And they would say, yeah, absolutely, it's going to grow to $1 million. Okay, so how come you did not go to the bank yet and loan your house and put everything into Bitcoin if you're so confident? Well, we cannot put everything in one basket, all eggs in one basket. Well, then you don't believe in it, right? Right? Because the statistics of the richest, most wealthy, affluent people in the world proves that diversification is actually not the right thing to do. Right? So that's a very, very kind of contrarian advice. Again, not a financial advice here, but statistics shows that the richest people, at this point of time, you can say Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they have completely unproportional stakes in their businesses. Yeah, maybe they have 10 investments, although 20 investments, hundreds of investments, but 1 or 2 investments would be 90% of their net worth. In case of Elon, that's probably, SpaceX or whatever else he has, like Tesla, obviously, right? The AI Neuralink or whatever, right? Neuralink, I think. In case of Jeff Bezos, it's clearly Amazon, right? So, and all these are paper gains too, by the way. And that's just not just applied to the richest people of the day, like to the top billionaires. It applies to most people. If you analyze your situation as well, you would see that lots of your assets are unproportional. And the genius is, if an asset keeps growing, just don't sell it. Right? So if it's 10%, like let's assume you have 10 investments, 10% into each, one investment just keeps rocking and rolling. Do not cut it down. Do not trim it. Do not try to make it back to, reallocate it to 10% of your portfolio. Just keep it. That's not my advice. That's kind of what, the top hedge fund managers say. And that stuff is backed by stats. So, therefore, if you are so much a believer in Bitcoin, why don't you put everything into that category, right? So why don't you sell your house, mortgage it out, whatever, right? if you believe in it, if the price of $100,000 is so relevant. But the thing is, it's very expensive, and lots like those people can say, yeah, like we already invested, like, but they're bullshitting. Like in most cases, they're just bullshitting. So in most cases, they bullshit for the most part themselves, even because they didn't even calculate how much of their net worth is allocated into Bitcoin, right? Like just simple math. So the problem with Bitcoin, therefore, as well is, if you're actually not bullshitting, is okay, fine. Let's assume you have a significant portion of your capital into Bitcoin, say 90%, 95%, 80%, 75%. What are you going to do? How are you going to eat? Right? Are you going to sell it? Because if you sell in Bitcoin to eat, you are making a very wrong move. You're selling your investment. That's another thing. Do not ever sell your investment. Right? Your investment should grow. It should be for the next forever. What's the time horizon on Bitcoin? Forever. What's the time horizon on a stock? Forever. What's the time horizon on anything you do? Forever, right? So it's and again, that's not me saying this. That's like the top investors saying that, right? So if you are investing, if you're holding, say, 90% of your net worth into Bitcoin and you're never selling it, then how do you eat? Because it does not produce any dividends, and that's the real problem. Now with gold, same situation. You have piece of gold. It's even worse actually. I was contemplating about this earlier this week. How can you do anything with the gold? Let's assume you live in country A and you have, I don't know, $1 million worth of gold. How you transport it to country B? That's a huge question. Well, you can say, I just go through the customs and just report it. Okay, good luck. Will you be able to report it $1 million? Like, I mean, you'll have to, they'll probably confiscate it from you, accuse you of certain things, put you in jail, and then start asking you to collect evidence that you righteously purchased that $1 million worth of gold. And if you don't have the paperwork, well, guess what? You may go to jail, right? Potentially, right? Not only that, but they will also be charging you the hosting fees because they'll be having to store the gold somewhere. And by the time that all the court situation is done, from what I know, 10%. If you'll be lucky if 10% of the worthiness of your confiscated gold you'll be able to get it back, right? Because it will take years and years for you to sue the government, etc. So gold, from that perspective, is super immobile, actually. So we say, reserve assets so good, so portable. We're going to discuss the portability today, and they're not. So Bitcoin is way more portable. But again, same problem with gold, same problem with Bitcoin. Even if gold was portable, so you could actually easily move it out from country A to country B, do you sell it? Because the thing is, if it's a great investment, do not sell it, right? So like keep holding it, like generate the cash flow outside of that investment, and that's the problem. What if you can't generate the cash flow outside of that investment? What if you cannot generate cash flow outside of gold, outside of Bitcoin? You have to start closing down a position, trimming your position. And what happens is, during the worst times, psychologically, you would trim the most. During the most bearish downsides. Why? Because that's how we are. We humans, we suck at psychology. Most of us absolutely emotional. There's a rule, 90%, 90% of users, you lose 90% of their capital within 90 days. So if you start timing the market when you can cash out, etc., you are screwed because you'll kind of X out of the worst possible situation. The best case scenario in that case would be just to cash out a little bit every single month, right? Then the question is, which country are you on? What if they change the rules in that specific country regarding how to, kind of trim your position? Now, in case of gold, physical gold, how do you close a little bit? You have like this, a coin. What, do you cut the coin in half and like just go itself half of the coin? No, you go and sell the entire coin, right? Which will probably last you for like a couple of months or whatever. So how do you decide on these things? So it's very difficult in current realities. So technically, with gold, especially back in the past, you could have, it could become more divisible. We could go over divisibility as well. But today, not the case necessarily. Today, the gold is as difficult as Vita money. The gold coin is as difficult to move as it is difficult to move a cow. I would argue, right? Given all the situations. Because with the gold, all you have to do is just provide vaccines, right? I think with gold you have to provide the origin of the money. How did you get it? You're not going to be able to sell it because it's a liquid and blah 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 blah. With gold you can eat it. With Bitcoin situation is a little bit easier because Bitcoin is way more divisible, way more portable, but you'll still have to be trimming your position. So every single month you'll have to sell a little bit of your Bitcoin to eat, right? To provide yourself shelter and stuff like that, and entertainment. And that's the problem with those reserve currencies. In theory, they are amazing. In theory, keyword is in theory. In reality, though, absolutely not good. Because yeah, sure, you can definitely get some, like, people like Bitcoin because it appreciates quite a lot. But guess what? Whenever Bitcoin starts producing 6% at most annual return, like once it becomes a mature asset class, let's assume it gets to gold today is 22 trillion. Let's assume Bitcoin gets to 22 trillion as well. At that point in time, Bitcoin will start growing by 6% a year, just like gold. I guarantee you that investment will become a lot, still better than gold, but it will become a lot less publicly forced through marketing and media, because 6% is just not cool. It's good when Bitcoin is $20,000 and within a year it goes to $100,000. That's interesting. That's a 5x return. But of course, as the asset grows, the return magnitude will start depreciating just because of the size. So once Bitcoin, if Bitcoin gets to 20 trillion, at that point in time, it's going to be 6% a year. And that's all you can do. Now the question to all the, you have gold bucks, to all the Bitcoin bucks, do you still like Bitcoin? Do you still keep it? And do you still, are you still a Bitcoin maxer? Do you still pour everything into just Bitcoin at 6% a year? And maybe, maybe you do. And of course, people will say, yeah, absolutely. But in reality, will they follow through? Are they going to walk the walk, or are they just going to bullshit you? Right? Because bullshit is bullshit. Anybody can say things, right? So that's the difference with Vita, because Vita is self-replicable. So Vita pays you dividends. Those dividends are backed. So you, of course, you can still kind of trim in your position. Like, it would be nice for those dividends to be reinvested. But those are backed dividends, meaning that those are actual dividends, meaning that those dividends, if you trim those dividends, they will not take away from your initial position. That's the most important part, right? So with Bitcoin, let's say you have one Bitcoin. It grows or whatever. If you trim your position, you will have to sell, say, 0.01 Bitcoin. Now you have 0.99 Bitcoin. Then the next month you sell another 0.01 Bitcoin. You have 0.98 Bitcoin. So your position is being trimmed. With Ghost, let's assume you have 100 Ghost coins, right? And you earn dividend, 3 Ghost coins in dividends. You can go and cash out those 3 coins, right? You can still have your balance, your principal of 100 Ghosts. In fact, what could happen is, if it's a very positive month, lots of bridging fees, what could happen is, let's assume you earned 10 Ghosts on your, like, you put your 100 Ghosts and you earn 10 Ghosts that month. Okay, so cool. You can trim out, say, half of the dividend, so 5 Ghosts go spended, right, on your whatever, on your day-to-day activities. But the remaining 5, add that to the principal. Now you have 105. Now that accumulates. So that's what's possible with Vita money. Impossible with the reserve currencies completely. If you don't get it, you don't get it. We're not here to persuade anybody. Listen, if you like Bitcoin, you like Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is a great product. No, right? No questions asked. It's just that we believe that it's just not how world is working. And we're gonna kind of discuss specifically why, despite Vita amazing properties, it lost to reserve, let alone fiat. Fiat is a complete scam. Okay, so here, Carl Menger. Even Carl Menger, who was massively towards the metal coins. Like, he was massively, he's the initiator, one of the originators of Austrian economics, but perhaps the originator of the Austrian economics. In the origins of money, even he says, it's obvious, even to the most ordinary intelligence, that a commodity should be given up by its owner in exchange for another more useful to him. But that every economic unit in a nation should be ready to exchange his goods for little metal discs, apparently useless as such, or for documents representing the latter, is a procedure so opposed to the ordinary course of things. So I kept saying this on and on and on. It's like, everybody accepts the fact that it's extremely difficult. Like, it's a very difficult trade to persuade somebody to spend their useful money like Vita for metal disc or a document representing the latter. So, of course, back in the day, paper, right, was a document representing gold. Today, it's just a piece of fucking paper representing trust. As a I mean, Mr. Ike, with your permission, it's a promise backed by a promise. Well said. Like, promise backed by a promise. That's what fiat money is today. Amazingly put. Love this. So, in this situation, right, how would you persuade somebody, again, to trade your cows, livestock, farms, like actual, even shelter, right, or or your services for gold, right? Because you cannot consume it, cannot do anything. So everybody, all the philosophers accept the fact that this is very difficult. Like it's not ordinary. It's opposed to the ordinary course of things, right? That's what it says. Okay. So let's go through the intro. So we're going to be referring mostly to Jevons. So Jevons wrote wrote about 7 properties of money. So let's start first of all with the functions of money. So on the functions of money, again, we're going to continue next week as well with this article. It's a very difficult article. We need to dive deeper into this one. So we have the introduction here. Beautiful. So first things first, Jevons. The book is Money and the Mechanism of Exchange. It was published, I believe, a couple of decades or a couple of years prior to The Origins of Money by Karl Menger. So they were contemporary to each other. So currency, Jevons says there's currency in, he describes that currency in pastoral state, right? So he admits it. So you have currency in pastoral state. There's an entire chapter about it. So he says they're easily transferable, the pastoral state currency, meaning livestock. So he said that money, which is Vita money, easily transferable, convey them. He doesn't call it Vita, right? Easily transferable, convey themselves about, and can be kept for many years, so that they readily perform some of the functions of money. Now, what he referred to can be kept for many years, right? Because we're going to be discussing how it's not durable. So first of all, livestock can be kept for many years, right? There's shelf life, right, of livestock. But also, when we go for some seeds, right? Seeds themselves could be dried out to some extent and could be also stored. And apparently he says that it was possible even in pastoral state societies, right? So that's interesting, right? So he even says that it's not kind of, the Vita money is not entirely undurable. Okay. Then another chapter talks about the agricultural state. So again, pastoral state, livestock, agricultural state, same thing. Corn has been the medium of exchange. He says that. In remote parts of Europe, from the time of the ancient Greeks to the present day, in Norway, corn is even deposited in banks. Okay? Talking about that, Vita money was never there. Vita money was always there. That's the whole point. And lent and borrowed. So corn was lent and borrowed. Right? Corn, not gold, corn. Because again, gold is a fucking, like, some yellow thing. Why do I need it? Corn I can eat. Corn I can grow, right? I can make sure that I buy some corn, right? And my family won't die from hunger. It's very useful to me. Gold, what do I do with gold? What wheat, barley, and oats are to Europe, such as maize in parts of Central America. So maize was also there, right? Especially Mexico, where it formerly circulated. In many of the countries surrounding the Mediterranean, olive oil, right, is one of the commonest articles of produce and consumption. Being moreover pretty uniform in quality, very important, durable, and easily divisible. See how money is not divisible. Olive oil is very divisible, right? It has long served as currency in Ionian Islands. Well, I don't know how to spell that. Some towns of Asia Minor and elsewhere in the Levant. Okay, so I'm assuming that's modern Greece and Turkey, maybe Italy as well. So that's what's happening. So there was an entire chapter on agricultural state in his book as well. So again, everybody confirms that there has been money as far as pastoral state and as far as agricultural state. It's just that gold became so hype, the metal discs became so hype that that's the good money. You say, oh, it's so much better than fiat. Sure, gold is way better than fiat, 100%. Not saying no, but we're talking about Vita, which is even better than gold, even better than reserve currencies. Money functions. We're going to start with Aristotle. Lots of people, when you Google this up, you'll find that he's attributed to kind of identify 3 functions of money. But that's Google search. And myself and a couple of other thinkers on the topic only found 2 functions of money. So first, we're going to discuss the functions of money, then we're going to go into the properties of money in order for the money to serve these functions, right? So functions and properties, 2 separate things. So he spoke about unit of account and medium of exchange. Specifically in politics, he wrote about that. So let's go. So actually, do I provide? Oh, yeah. So here we're going to be providing further we're going to be providing the quotes. So in any case, Aristotle is attributing two functions, unit of account and medium of exchange. In fact, he says like money should be very useful. Like if money is not useful, if money cannot be consumed, that's bad money. Money has to have its own value on its own. That's what he says. He was very much against borrowing. Like he was very much against the whole credit economy. Because credit economy was not so when I'm creating goods for money, that's what money is supposed to be as the medium of exchange. We're going to cover this in a second, right? But if I am trading money for money, I'm creating credit economy, and that is disgusting. That's what he says. Like that's that's perverted. I think he literally uses the word perverted. So trading money for money, which happens in like I'm trading money, so I'm giving you money and then I'm charging you additional interest later on. That's trading money for money. So that's perverted. And unit of account meaning like okay, so let's assume whatever, like one piece of corn that is the unit of account. So let's evaluate this building in terms of units of corn, right? Stuff like that, right? So that's the unit of account. Now, John Locke further introduces a third function of money, store value. John Locke is very famous for thinking about property. What is property, right? What is public property? What is private property? How to differentiate between the two. Very, very strong philosophical work, second treatise of government. And he specifically he's not about money, it's more about property, but he also he talks a lot about the store value of money. So money is supposed to be store value. So you put your hard work, hours and hours of your sweat, blood, and tears, and would you like to somehow materialize all the effort? So let's create money that would materialize that effort. That's store value. Right? So like that's kind of an easy explanation, like maybe metaphysical explanation of store value. Then we have some other thinkers as well. So we got Karl Marx in Capital. He described the function of money to be a universal medium of payment in the global market. Right or wrong, he said that, right? So we're not here to judge. We're just here to kind of to read and summarize. And there was also standard of value, Givens himself. So Givens introduced unit of account, medium of exchange, store value, and he also introduced standard of value. Standard of value is for debt, so mostly for credit economy, that Aristotle was completely against. So I think we have a matrix here somewhere. Yeah, here. So these are the functions, right? So medium of exchange, unit of account, store value, standard of value, universal money. We have the thinkers who were thinking like about the primary functions. So Aristotle, medium of exchange and unit of account. Locke, mostly store of value. Adam Smith, all three of these. Karl Marx introduced five, but medium of exchange and unit of account were primary, the other were secondary. For Givens, same thing. The first two were primary, same thing as for Aristotle. And the store of value and standard of value, that's for debt, that was secondary. Karl Menger and Austrians, for the most part, said, listen, it's just a medium of exchange. That's the primary. Everything else is secondary. There could be 10,000 functions of money. That's cool. Medium of exchange is the primary function of money. Now, how people are trying to kind of, how the money is then trying to resolve the function of the medium of exchange is due to how people want it to be. And we're not here to really claim what the other functions are because there's so many different functions. Because for one person, it's just, it's two functions. For another person, it's five functions. For me, it could be 100 functions of money, right? For me, for you, it could be 50 functions of money. But all of these 50 functions, for me, is 100 functions. For Karl Marx, it's 5 functions. For Aristotle, it's 2 functions. All of them are resolved by just agreeing that this money is a medium of exchange. We want to exchange goods and services, time, etc., in exchange for something. That is money. That's what Austrians said. So Austrians, for the most part, are trying to say, hey, listen, like, it's all cool to have all these rigid frameworks, but let's actually remove the rigidity and philosophically introduce a much more freer frameworks without that many rules and only introduce the most critical rules. Right? That's how I would describe the whole Austrian school of thought. Okay, so let's go one by one. Right? So again, it's going to be a very, very long article for us to comprehend. So medium of exchange. So Aristotle positioned function of medium of exchange of money as money's primary purpose, seen it as crucial instrument for facilitating trade. Okay, So he says, there are two sorts of wealth getting, as I've said. One is a part of household management, the other is retail trade. The former, necessary and honorable, while that which consists in exchange is justly censured. For it is unnatural and a mode by which men gain from one another. The most hated sort, and with the greatest reason, is usury, right? So that's usury, that's banking, right? Lending, credit economy, which makes a gain out of money itself and not from the natural object of it, right? So again, medium of exchange is I'm selling goods for money, right? And I'm buying with money, I'm buying other goods, right? But if I am using money to generate more money, that's usury, that's bad. Inflation, therefore, is bad. We spoke about self-replication. Inflation and self-replication is bad, meaning synthetic APY is bad. Aristotle said that, not me, right? Conversely, with Ghost, for example, you have zero inflation. The quantity is increasing backed by bridging fees. If there are no bridging fees, there's no inflation. So there's no usury whatsoever. So that is, from Aristotle's perspective, should be a perfect medium of exchange. Money was intended to be used in exchange, but not to increase that interest, right? Okay, so he talks about how it's bad to be interested, and he's kind of analyzing everything from telos perspective, and teleological perspective is essentially perspective of the finality, right? So okay, like there could be 3-4 kind of reasons in between, but what's the final reason? So let's just jump straight to the final reason of what money is and just analyze from that perspective, right? As opposed to like, oh, maybe there's some intermediate reasons which are good. We don't care about the intermediate. We only care about the final reason. So that's how Aristotle positioned his whole philosophical approach. Okay, unit of account. So here Aristotle as well, because he admitted that there's unit of account. This is why all goods must have a price set on them. So some type of price, right? Like index, for example, on the DEX, right? We have egos versus DAI. If you're going to go with the native coin, it's going to be egos versus ETC, Ethereum Classic. So Ethereum Classic versus Ghost, what is the price discrepancy? Like, how do they relate to each other, right? So that is the price. That is a unit of account. So DEX enables us to create a decentralized unit of account. So one ETC is equal to 10 ghosts or whatever, or like one ghost is equal to 100 ETC, right? For then there will always be an exchange, and if so, association of men with men. Money, then, acting as a measure, makes goods commensurate and equates them. For neither would there have been association if there were not exchange, nor exchange if there were not equality, nor equality if there were not commensurability. Very, very strong statement here, right? So money shall be acting as this, like as the scale of value, right? That's what money was supposed to be. Nothing else. Nothing else. Today, what they're trying to do with fiat, they say, hey, let's use fiat as a tool to help economy. Let's use money as a tool to control unemployment. Let's use money as a tool to, manage external affairs, international affairs. That's not what money is supposed to be. Money is just a medium of exchange and unit of account. Stop misusing money, you bastards. Bastards are politicians, central bankers, etc. Right? Stop misusing it. It's like the same thing as like my wife is supposed to. I'm supposed to have my wife in order to to have children, right? To essentially recreate my genetic pool, right? In order to have a family, etc. But my wife is a woman, so how about we use my wife also as a slut? Because it could be used, right? So let's do that too. So that's what fiat is. I apologize for a graphic and bad example, but that's what fiat money is, right? Good money would be, no, let's just stick to the wife concept. Nothing else. The fiat is like, oh, she can be a slut. She could be sexually exploited. It's amazing, right? We can use that for our external affairs, right? Let's use wives for blackmail, right? Like stuff like this. I'm sorry for graphic examples, but that's just like a very, very good kind of analogy of what current money is and what it's not completely supposed to be. Interesting here. There must then be a unit, and that fixed by agreement. For it is that makes all things commensurate, since all things are measured by money. So now, great example. Aristotle literally wrote that out. Let A be a house. That's Aristotle, thousands of years ago. Let A be a house. That's not a mathematical problem, right? That's his quote. Let A be a house, B 10 min, whatever, C is a bed. A is half of B. If the house is worth 5, like I'm assuming that's money, 5 mina, or equal to them, the bed C is a tenth of B. It is plain then how many beds are equal to a house. 5. Right? So essentially money in this case, so here's a house, here's a bed. He is like saying, okay, so this house is worth this amount of coins or whatever money. This amount of coins, money, whatever is equal to a bed. So then we can then figure out how many beds are equal to one house. So that's what money is supposed to be as a unit of account. That's the function. Okay. Now, store of value. So store of value is mostly coming from John Locke, and it's interesting because what he talks about Vita money. Like everybody talks about Vita money. But we don't hear this concept ever. That's the weird part. I'm so glad that this concept came to us, to the Ghost Project, and we are going to be pioneering it. But we're not pioneering the concept. We are simply discovering and describing what has been in existence for thousands of years before gold. Everybody talks about Vita. Check this out. So he talks about so he talks about wealth that must be stored and preserved over time, right? That's kind of the biggest concept. Again, if you would give his nuts for a piece of metal, pleased with its color, or exchange his sheep for shells, or wool for a sparkling pebble or a diamond, and keep those by him, all his life he invaded not the right of others. He might heap up as much of these durable things as he pleased. The exceeding of the bounds of his just property not lying in the largeness of his possession, but the perishing of anything uselessly in it. Right? So he talks about sheep, talks about nuts, right? So yeah. So and thus came in the use of money some lasting thing that men might keep without spoiling. So his thing was spoiling, and he specifically just kind of preceding this quote, he talks about how I think corn is less durable than nuts, but nuts are like extremely durable. So nuts could be used as store of value. Like he uses these examples, right? Like this is a quote right after that. Right? So he like makes the comparison of durability, right? So store of value in that case, for good money to function as store of value, it must be very durable. That was the angle that Locke was using. So specifically corn and nuts, so both are Vita money. So all the examples of Vita. Okay. Now, standard of value. So standard of value, that's for debt. That's just Jivan said, hey, it would be nice. And also, Jivan's also used Vita money. Like all direct quotes, you can find them yourself. I'm not making anything up. Like it's crazy. If corn be borrowed, corn might be paid back with interest in corn. Why? Why corn? Like, right? Like it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So again, standard value, we're not going to be describing this as a function because most people say that's just a derivative of the first A functions if needed, right? And universal money, for the most part, universal money was used as kind of money for international trade. And I would say that this is a pretty interesting differentiation because from what I am observing now, I could be wrong, but from what I'm observing now, it seems that gold has been, silver, gold, etc., metal money, has only been used for international payments, for cross-nation payments. So that function is quite interesting because essentially, like, let's say we look in 2,000 years ago. Yeah, there was gold money. Gold money would be mostly used for, different polis. Like polis was a city, like different, cities, right? Different nations, different city-states. While internally, people would still transact in Vita money. So then we could say that, well, 2,000 years ago, Vita money would still serve quite well for kind of like inside of the city, inside of the nation currency. But for the cross nation, then gold was introduced as a second monetary vehicle. So there have been two vehicles at the same time. One is Vita, another one is reserve. And reserve was used just to serve the universal function of money. So that's quite interesting just to, know that lots of thinkers, including Karl Marx, admitted that is one of the functions. Okay, so we already went through this. We got about 5 minutes. I do not want to kind of rush through this. Again, I would like to finish it later next week. But let's just start the process. So here we talk about 7 essential qualities of money. Those essential qualities in the material form, very important. Prior to the internet phase, prior to the telecommunication phase, obviously prior to the Web3 phase, right? No computers. So Jevons specifically outlines 7 essential qualities of the material form of money. And from that lens, Vita money lost. How did it lose? So we're going to go through each one in particular next week. Utility value, portability, indestructibility or durability, homogeneity, or I think it's homogeneity, or what's the other term for it? I forgot. Fungibility. There we go. Fungibility. Divisibility, stability of value, and cognizability. So utility and value, stability of value, 2 different things. Utility and value means that the money itself has to serve as value. Has to have its own utility. It has could be essentially consumed, right? Could be spent for something, right? Could be used for something. While stability of value shows more of what is the price point? Ideally, the price point should be not very volatile. That's the biggest criticism so far about Bitcoin. It's super volatile, so not good stability of value. That's the critics of Bitcoin. That's what they say. So if you attach, so Jevons specifically put them in order. This is the most important property. This is the second most important property, and so on. So if you say this is property 7, weight 7, this is property weight 6, this is property weight 5, and therefore this is property weight 1, right? And then we judge existing types of money, fiat, reserve, and Vita, we get the following scores. So Vita loses 48, score 48. So obviously Vita lost. Even to fiat is score 61. And the best money is reserve. We're talking about the best money in the material form. That's very important. Lots of these things actually practically should be lowered down. For example, so we say that divisibility is a moderate kind of score for reserve currencies. But for most of us, it's not just moderate. For most of us, it's actually low. Because again, you have a golden coin. What do you do? What do you specifically do? Right? You can go to a craftsman and try to do something, but you're not a gold expert. I'm sorry, right? None of us are. So it's moderate, but given all the laws and regulations, is actually low, right? So I would argue that fiat and reserve are kind of equal because of the laws, because of the stupid laws and regulations. Same thing applies to portability. Portability is moderate. I would say it's low. If it's less than $10,000, sure, you can transport it. But we're talking about your net worth. Let's assume your net worth is $1 million. How do you transport gold? It's crazy. It's you're not going to be able to do it. Again, they're going to just take it from you. It's completely unportable. It's portable for the nations, not for you. Then I would argue Vita is also pretty low in portability, but gold is also very difficult in portability. Now we say, well, fiat is easy in portability. Also not necessarily true. In theory, yes. But how about this? So you can, let's assume you're within country A. So Mr. IK, you're in country A, I'm also in country A. If I'm sending you a wire transfer in country A, maybe it is going to go through without issues, although it will go through with issues no matter what. It will take you forever to transport that money. Let's assume I'm in country B, Mr. IK, you're in country A. You send me an international wire. Good luck. Good luck to us. It's going to take a month if it goes through. It's going to be using some Swift freaking thing. It will be frozen if country B is under some sanctions or whatever, or not friendly nation to nation A. So it's really not that portable, right? So in theory it is, but given laws and regulations, it's insanely not. So I would argue that this high is actually moderate, and this moderate is actually low. And Vita is obviously low. How the hell do you transport a cow? It's very difficult. So these scores are the best possible scores for fiat and reserve. And I would say they are pretty neutral for Vita. So if we put realistic scores, I would say this is probably going to be somewhere around 50, mid-50s, probably mid-50s as well. This will still stay 48. In that case, Vita money in today's, given the laws and regulations, is actually not that bad. I'm talking about material world Vita. Material. Right? The actual livestock. The actual, whatever, pound of, or whatever, gallon of olive oil, right? So I'm talking about the material form. Because in Web3 form, you will see how Vita absolutely kicks ass. Web3 Vita kicks everybody's ass. That's very important. All right, so let's pause here. Mr. Edik is asking, next week, are you going to add ghosts to this chart? So not yet. Here's why. The just to kind of manage everybody's expectations, we first of all need to address the critique that we're going to get for Vita. Like, why Vita is, if it's so good, if you guys saying it's so good, how come nobody's trading in cows? You guys are old schools. You guys are just, giving some nonsense here. Like, it's like, come on, like, stop feeding bullshit to people, right? That's the critique. So our goal is to be able to have very properly substantiated arguments to respond to those comments, to those potential comments. That's why it's very important not just throw an idea, but make sure that this idea is very wholesome and super backed by facts, literature, quotes, right, sources. So therefore, we cannot put Ghost yet. Why? Ghost is not Vita money. Ghost is a Web3 Vita money. So therefore, what's the difference between Vita and Web3 Vita? Vita in the material world only has two properties: inelastic and self-replicable. That's it. Now, Web3 Vita will be inelastic, self-replicable, and Web3 architecture. But for that, we need to define what does it mean for a project to have a Web3 architecture. There's going to be a series of very, very convoluted articles as well. A lot more convoluted because Vita money is more economics, like it's more common sense. Web3 is a lot more more technical nature, more game theory nature. So that's going to be a little bit more difficult. Once we define Web3, what does it mean for a project to have a pure Web3 architecture? We then can say, okay, now let's look at Ghost. Is Ghost inelastic? Is Ghost self-replicable? And does Ghost have a pure Web3 architecture? We'll prove that we do. Therefore, Ghost is the first Web3 Vita money. And then we see how Web3 Vita money kicks ass to reserve currencies and fiat left and right based on the score. Not even funny. So essentially, whoever comes up with the first Web3 Vita money is the king of money. And it seems like it's going to be Ghost. And that's the case, guys. Sky's the limit. Let's go rock and roll. On this positive note, obviously with the disclaimer, there's a disclaimer somewhere. So let me just put the disclaimer to make sure that there's no overpromises. Here's a disclaimer. Please read that materials are presented just for informational purposes. All right. On this positive note, let's pause. We'll resume next week with this article. Thank you so much for being